Nutrition Equity, the podcast that is all about the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. I'm your host, Joanna, and today we're joined. The Medical Nutrition Equity Act is a bill that would mandate healthcare companies to cover medical formula, and vitamins, and that are necessary for life. The Medical Nutrition Equity Act has not yet passed, and we are currently looking for a House Republican to cover the bill. Joining us today is Heather, a parent of a Cobalamin G patient, and together we will unravel the stories, insights, and experiences that make HCU Awareness Month impactful, and stay with us and learn, empathize, and advocate for change together. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this episode with friends, family, and anyone who's can benefit from our discussion. Now let's jump into this remarkable conversation with Heather, a parent, caregiver, and advocate, as we explore the story of her child who lives with Cobalamin G and the potential for a brighter, more equitable future through the MNEA, or the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin. So, can you start off? Can you tell us about your child's condition, Cobalamin G, and how it impacts your family's life?
Yeah. So, Cobalamin G metabolic disorder is very rare. It's rare enough that my husband had a pharmacist say, "Well, I've never heard of that, so I think you're making it up," which was really ironic because it was a pharmacy for rare disorders.
Yeah.
But what it means is that my son's body has a hard time processing certain basic life-building nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, he needs different vitamins and medications to help him live.
Mm-hmm.
Because without them, his body will literally poison itself. There's a story I was once told about a bunch of deer getting stuck in a valley. And, this is relevant. I'll tie it in. But
yeah.
I was told a story of a bunch of deer getting stuck in a valley. And some people who were well-meaning tossed a bunch of hay into the valley because it's what they had.
Mm-hmm.
When they were finally able to get to the deer, they found them all perished.
Mm-hmm.
And they did an autopsy to see what was wrong. And every single one of the deer's bellies were full of hay.
Mm-hmm.
They were fed, but they were not nourished. And in the same way, without these medical prescription grade vitamins and supplements, my son cannot be nourished.
Right.
So it's gotten better as he has been on the medications longer, But we have a very strict routine where we have a strict routine where we at first had to write down like a 20-step schedule for the day. We jokingly called it a brain because I was like, I don't have a brain anymore. I need this piece of paper.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people write things down.
Huh?
Yeah. A lot of people write things down.
Yeah. It was really crazy at first. And we have to give him an injection every morning. He's 3.5. That goes over as well as you think it does.
Oh yeah.
And I have to argue with doctors and hospital staff who don't understand his condition. They've never heard of the cysteine betaine. And so they'll be like, well, I don't think this is necessary. I'll be like, I will unhook my child from the IV myself and take him home if you're not going to listen. But, he's also G-tube fed, has epilepsy, cerebral palsy, and his conditions are bad enough that despite the fact that I have 2 business-related master's degrees, I cannot hold a full-time job. I have been told, oh, we're not going to hire you because of your commitments to this medically disabled child.
Jeez.
That's illegal, but heck.
Yep.
I don't need to be working with people like that in my life anyway.
No.
But it is a huge struggle, and it's to the point where other people decide, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. So that's how a lot of my daily life is currently impacted. Don't know what other questions you have for me.
How was he diagnosed, or when was the diagnosis story, like when he was diagnosed and how?
Okay. So, my son was born in May of 2020. And for those who don't remember, there was a few things going on at the time.
COVID.
And so he was born premature and had to spend time in the NICU and everything. But, he was discharged a month later, healthy and happy. Or so we thought. As time went on and he had more and more time for things to build up in his body, he started to struggle. He started to have issues with constipation, which was the first sign, and then just wasn't putting on weight, and we didn't know why. And the doctors did every test that they had access to, but we're still coming up with nothing indicated except for mild anemia. And, as time went on, I kept saying, something is wrong, and they're like, we don't see anything. And I thankfully have a husband who's an engineer, and so one of the appointments I sent him in, and with all the social graces of an engineer, he walked out with 2 referrals, one for PT and one for OT. And PT and OT thankfully took one look at this kid and said, something's very wrong here. And then at one point, my son just stopped eating entirely, and given that he was less than a year old at the time, I took him to the ER, and they said to me, you did the right thing by taking him here. We didn't know what was wrong at the time, but the homocysteine which is an amino acid that can build up in the body if the body doesn't know how to get rid of it, if it doesn't have the processes to get rid of it. It had gotten so high that he had gone septic. And so his own body was poisoning him to death. And for about a week he was in a coma, or it's not called a coma, I keep forgetting the word for it, but a few things would make his eyes flutter open for a fraction of a second, but other than that he was just still as a log. And like the things he would respond to would be me singing, his favorite toys sound, and his dad's facial hair. Because his dad would be naughty and pull the mask down and put Cody's hand on there, and he'd flutter his eyes open very slightly. We knew he was still in there, but we were watching him die in front of us until one medicine student at UCSF looked at his red blood cells, not just, he's anemic. They looked at the size, and the red blood cells were enlarged. They were like, has anyone checked this child's B12 levels? And then once that happened, they scrambled to get a hold of B12 and betaine. Sorry, I think I froze up there. They scrambled to get a hold of B12 and betaine. And then my son woke up. And, a little bit of comedy, when he first woke up, he screamed for 24 hours straight because he's like, finally. But, he's back in our lives because of these medicines. We would have buried him by now without them.
Yeah. Just happy you found somebody who actually knew what they were talking about.
One thing I will tell to everyone I can, I don't care how old or young the person you're concerned about is, and this person could be yourself. If there is something wrong and you've gone to many places and they haven't figured it out, go to a teaching hospital. Because at teaching hospitals, they like to figure stuff out. And I know this doesn't work for everyone, but that's what saved my son's life, was the fact that the doctors who were the professors for the teaching hospital didn't want to say, I have no clue what's going on. And the students were like, I will find it, I will find it, I will find it. And they saved his life.
Most of these conditions are a paragraph in a textbook, and so if anybody's going to find it, it will be a student.
Yeah.
Or somebody fairly new to medicine.
Or someone who is specialized in it.
Yeah, that
but
too.
Those are rare.
Yeah.
They're rarer than the conditions themselves.
But always good to have one of them on your fighting team too. So for other people to explain it. I've had to go to my geneticist to fight for me for a lot of things before. Living with rare metabolic condition can be incredibly challenging. Could you share some of the daily struggles and triumphs you and your child have experienced?
Yeah, so, my son, he'll often get an upset stomach. He's only 3 and he knows what ibuprofen is and when he needs it. I'll show him the bottle because he can't speak yet either. That's a common thing as I've been a part of the Facebook groups with other people who either have this or have children with it. Will say, oh yeah, speech is a difficult thing a lot of times. But he's very intelligent. He knows what Pedialyte is. He knows what ibuprofen is. He knows what water is. He knows what his little carton of formula is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing. He'll also get very tired or very cold or very hot really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of those, it's like, he's 3.5 and will still take multiple naps in a day. And when he wants to nap, I let him. I've had some people say, why are you letting him nap at 7 p.m.? Because he needs the sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same story as other people. His body has said, I need a break, and I'm taking it. That's one of the struggles, and then because of how far his condition went before they caught it, he has cerebral palsy, so he has a hard time moving and getting his limbs to do what he wants them to do. He has epilepsy, so like when I mentioned he can suddenly get too hot. If he's gotten too hot, pity. If he's gotten too hot, he is at risk for a seizure.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not fun.
No.
It's to the point where our local firemen know us because they've had to come over with EMS enough times. And our neighbors know, oh, there's an ambulance outside our complex again. We'll better check on Cody.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's part of our struggle specifically.
Mm-hmm.
One of my hopes is that eventually these conditions will be caught sooner and sooner, and that they'll be treated sooner, because I think if Cody had been treated since birth, maybe he wouldn't have cerebral palsy. Maybe he wouldn't need a G-tube. And for those who don't know, a G-tube is a surgically inserted feeding tube that goes into the stomach. And you feed them directly into there. And maybe he wouldn't have epilepsy. And my hope is for anyone else with his condition, with these struggles, is for them to live a good full life without the extra struggles. Because even without the cerebral palsy, the epilepsy, the G-tube, he'd still get super tired. He would still get cold and hot really easily. Which, those in and of themselves are not fun to live with.
Mm-hmm.
But we can make a real difference in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are the majority of these conditions. There's a lot of them that have feeding tubes. The ones covered by this bill, and that hopefully will pass at some point. We're still working on getting it reintroduced, though, and running out of time this year. So, let's see. How did you? Can you explain the in simple terms? I'm not sure how familiar you are with the MNEA since Cobalamin disorders are pretty new to this. But the vitamins your child takes is, I believe, hydroxycobalamin.
Currently he is on cyanocobalamin, but we're working on getting that changed. Mm-hmm. And this is one area in which the bill would be able to help us and others, is that cyanocobalamin is often covered by insurance, but hydroxycobalamin is not. Mm-hmm. And you'll have to come back to me in like 6 months to a year to have me report on what the difference is for my son.
Yeah.
But
are we in between the two drugs?
We are currently still on the cyanocobalamin.
Yeah.
And, we'll be working with our pediatric metabolicist to get them switched.
Yeah.
Another struggle is that there is currently a shortage of hydroxycobalamin, and there always has been. That's why we were on the cyanocobalamin. Mm-hmm. So,
the difference in between cyanocobalamin and hydroxycobalamin.
Yeah. I don't know the difference for Cody yet. I know there is a lot of literature on why hydroxycobalamin is better, and the metabolicist, last time we spoke to her, had wonderful things to say that, as I mentioned before, I'm trained as an accountant, not a biologist, not a metabolicist, not a doctor, so I wouldn't be able to repeat it to you, and I apologize.
No problem. I understand. Most people are not well versed in medicine, which is why we have doctors. Let's see. I know you don't. I know also he doesn't follow a low protein diet. Most with the Cobalamin disorders, they don't. What are some of his favorite foods?
So, his favorite food is a formula called Nutrin Junior because he is G-tube fed. Yeah. And the thing is, specifically the Nutrin Junior is one of the few formulas that doesn't cause him to be constipated every single day. Mm-hmm. With that specific formula, it fits with his tummy. Mm-hmm. He knows what it is. He loves it. Mm-hmm. And he'll get so excited when you bring one of those cartons out and show it to him, and he'll pull it to his tummy because he knows that's where the food goes.
Yeah.
We have had times where there was mix-ups with insurance or shortages of that particular formula, and we have had to give something else to our son, and he's always miserable. Mm-hmm. He'll be in physical pain, he'll be crying, screaming, not as active. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, and having the exact thing that works for a body that is so fragile mm-hmm. is really life-changing. It is as life-changing, it's more life-changing for him than me figuring out that my body doesn't handle weight was for me. But that's a tangent for another day. But for anyone who has seen someone who, for whatever reason, has needed to change their diet for a medical reason, be it food allergies or diabetes or insert reason here, mm-hmm. I'm sure everyone knows someone who has really blossomed when they've changed their diet. Mm-hmm. It is even more so and more crucial for people who have a metabolic disorder because, that's the entire thing. That is the system that gives your body nutrition, period. Mm-hmm. It's like putting oil into the car's engine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super important that we maintain access to Cody's stuff, and also the amount of money that we were initially charged per month for his formula and everything was really expensive. Thankfully, California has programs that help parents of, children like Cody.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who is 21 years old or younger, there's a program that helps with cost, but not every state has those programs. In fact, very few do.
Mm-hmm.
California is a very expensive place to live, but I heard multiple stories of people moving out of state for the cheaper housing, but having to move back to California because they couldn't afford their child's medical care in that other state.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I realize this isn't very easy to talk about, and so does he eat at all off the? Is he completely G2 fed, or does he eat at all off of the? Can he eat any normal foods?
So he can do tastes by mouth, and sometimes he will crawl up to us and ask for some of what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Some of his favorite things are like any sort of tomato sauce or tomato paste.
Mm-hmm.
And he also likes caramel. And it has to be in a thin sauce in order for him to have that, so he doesn't choke on it. But most of the time, he'll come up to us, ask for some, and then proceed to spread it all over his arms because he's 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, thanks, kiddo, thanks. But also kids are supposed to be messy. They're supposed to do stuff like that. And I've had other parents who didn't know the struggles I've been through say, "Oh, you're so lucky he doesn't make those messes." I'm like, actually, I am not. Kids are supposed to make those messes.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not able to eat very much by mouth, and I have seen, others on the Facebook group saying, "Hey, my kid seems to have a little bit of difficulty swallowing." And so, I don't know if he would have been able to swallow better if we had treated him since birth or not.
Yeah.
And, my hope is that there will be advancements in testing, in politics, and in technology that allow future children like my son to have life so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Currently, we're working on newborn screening, getting it reauthorized, so that's another big one. But are the Cobalamins covered? Are they on the newborn screening?
Technically, yes, but the test is imperfect. The test catches very few.
Mm-hmm.
The test that actually the test that actually got my son diagnosed
mm-hmm.
was full panel genetic testing on me, my husband, and my son. Mm-hmm. And that is how they diagnosed him. And, there are other things, but because you have to look specifically at the homocysteine level,
mm-hmm.
it's often not bad when they're born. It takes time to build up.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
And I'm sure that's true of all of the homocysteines.
Yeah.
is, I have class myself. Let's see. Which it's a little bit more common to get diagnosed, but it's probably the most common of the cystinuria also. Let's see. And yet I wasn't diagnosed till I was 3. Have you encountered any obstacles or challenges in accessing the necessary medication? We went through some of that. Let's see, going down. How do you envision the passage of the MNEA in changing the lives of individuals and families who work, who can be both rewarding and challenging? What are some of the going back. Let's see. How do you envision the passage of the MNEA changing the lives of individuals and families affected by metabolic disorders like Cobalamin G?
Well, for one, and this is something huge, it will relieve stress in 2 areas: financial, but also the stress of actually getting the necessary medical help that the person needs. Mm-hmm. So there have been times when my son has needed 24/7 monitoring. It's not all the time, but when I'm dealing with that, I have a hard time calling doctors, insurance, pharmacies, and fighting with them all.
Mm-hmm.
And having something that will help have my back in those areas would have been so much better. I would have had more mental energy to apply for other programs to get help for myself and for my son.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way. And the other is, it's really hard if I'm sitting there wondering, okay, am I going to have to give my son a subpar food for him and watch him be in pain
mm-hmm.
so that he can get nutrition into him? Because he's still a small child. He still is in a state that could be fragile.
Mm-hmm.
But, things are progressing for him, and he has come a very long way. But, having this be easier, having it so future people with these challenges don't have the extra challenges, that is something huge. It makes everything so much more bearable.
How advocacy work can be both rewarding and challenging. What are some of your accomplishments or milestones you've achieved as an advocate? All our advocates for...
I don't necessarily have very much time to fight the world as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of mine are specific to my son, but just making sure that when we do have to go to the ER because he's had a seizure, I am bossy up front to say, hey, make sure that when it's time for my son's medication that your pharmacy has actually approved him to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And that among other things, making sure we have the right doctors, making sure we have people who listen to us. And also, like with our pharmacy, they now not only listen to us, but make it easier for us to do our meds. And I had to argue with a good number of people in order to get it to that point, which is a real pain. But, another thing I do and that I consider a huge win is I'll occasionally go on to a podcast like this one.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one I went on, I had like 4 hours of sleep over the course of a week because of how sick my son was at the time.
Yeah.
And
it was done kind of last minute.
Well, no, that was the last one. This one I have plenty of sleep, so I call that a win.
Good.
But there are so many people who have the energy to argue with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been one of those people in the past, and I've dialed it back, but now I'm starting to realize that sometimes you do need to argue at the world, but you just need the right cause to argue behind.
Mm-hmm.
If you're one of those people who likes to argue at the world, there are people who do not have a voice for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Or who have a hard time getting out there in force.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing. You can get your arguing fix if you still need that, and help others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have to fight too much, though. It's really... let's see. Could you share your personal stories? Any personal stories or moments that highlight the importance of the MNEA or in improving the lives of those affected by Cobalamin G?
Yeah, it's just, like I've said before, I wouldn't have my son today without the cobalamin and without the cysteine betaine powder. Those two things, I wouldn't have them at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so grateful that I live in an area that had access to them, that has programs to help us get those medications and to pay for them if our insurance decides to push back on us, which they always do.
Mm-hmm.
We have access to that, and we are so lucky to live in this state. But why the heck should it be just the people who live in certain states?
Yeah, agreed.
No one should expect you to pick up your life from where you are and move to where I am in order to get help.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes with people's jobs and such, that's not an option. I used to live in a very rural area of a landlocked state, and I've had the thought more than once that if we had been living there when my son got sick, he wouldn't have made it.
Mm-hmm.
And no parent should have that thought. No parent should have to face that struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I see in the future. Mm-hmm. This passing, and then people having access all throughout the United States to this, and
that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. I wish we could provide it to everyone everywhere too, but we do what we can.
As long as it's seen as long as a vitamin is seen as optional, that's the problem. And so that's a matter of fighting the FDA, which we get a chance to talk to coming up with the ELFPD, which is right now just, as far as I know, just for classical, but I believe it would help others too. Let's see. As we observe HCU Awareness Month, what message would you like to convey to our listeners and the broader community about the need for awareness and support for listeners, for the needs? Okay. As we observe HCU Awareness Month, what message would you like to convey to our listeners and the broader community and the need for awareness and support for individuals with metabolic disorders?
That they exist. We exist. As a community, we're here, and we need help. And my son needs the help. He is getting the help he needs currently. But, we got lucky. And there are others who need to have help projecting their voices to get what they need. And that's the message I'd put out there is, that, hey, there are others who have a hard time getting a voice forward because they're struggling for survival right now. But the other message I'd want to put forward is, if you have or think you have one of these conditions, please know that you are not alone. That there is a group of us together and we are willing to help each other and buoy each other up. I was willing to drop what I was doing for today to hop on here with you because I noticed your post. Nice to meet you, by the way.
So, let's put a face to the actual phone number and after I got off the list. Let's see. How can health professionals and lawmakers and the general public better understand and empathize with the challenges faced by individuals and families dealing with rare metabolic disorders?
So, for doctors specifically, it's that just because you have never seen something like some of the medications they use before doesn't mean that it's unimportant. Whenever Cody is in the hospital for an overnight EEG, or we've had to go to the ER because he's had either a really high fever or a seizure or whatever it may be, we have to educate the hospital staff every single time to, hey, my son needs his medications and he needs them on time. And, if I wasn't there arguing with them, it would be very hard for us to administer those to Cody. I am sure that there are a number of people at the ER we go to who look at me as one of those parents. Because the moment I get in, I have to start complaining to be listened to. And I don't like it.
Yeah.
But for lawmakers, what I want them to realize is that this isn't just a number. We're people. We are real, breathing people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for me, when I say we, I'm talking about the whole community, even though I'm not suffering from the condition myself. But I'm a real person who almost lost another real person.
Mm-hmm.
My son is a real person. All of those faces on Facebook who come together to help buoy each other up, they're all real people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, humans live in groups because we all need each other.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people full of light, full of stories, full of energy for life. I have never seen someone as happy as my son when he finds his toes.
Oh.
And I almost didn't have the last couple years with him.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I want people to know that the decisions they make have very real impact on all of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, there's a saying, to the world, you might just be one person, but to one person, you are the world. And that can apply for, you're like, oh, well, to the world, this is just a vitamin. But to someone suffering from one of these conditions, this vitamin is the world. This vitamin is life itself.
Mm-hmm.
And depriving them of that is like depriving that same person of water or air.
Mm-hmm. True. But yeah, we are. Yeah, you don't have any choice. You have to be fighting for this.
Yeah.
So you're kind of thrown into it. Can you share some resources or organizations that you have particularly that have particularly been helpful for you in your journey as a parent and advocate for Cobalamin G?
So the Homocystinuria Network is how I believe you found me. It's put me in contact with a number of people, and also there's a couple of Facebook groups, one that is specifically for people with Cobalamin disorders, you know, in their family, and one that is for the whole homocystinuria umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I recently had lunch with a acquaintance of mine who I was hoping to turn into a friend, and, you know, she mentioned having, and I'm going to say this wrong because I'm dyslexic, but MTHFR, I think.
Yes.
She's like, oh yeah, I have that. And I'm like, and she was also talking about how, yeah, lately my whole body's been falling apart for the last year, and I don't know why. And I'm like, I'm going to send you an invite to a couple of Facebook groups, and there will be people who have a little more knowledge from there. Because I'm not an expert in MTHFR, even though it's very similar to Cobalamin G. Like, these two are kind of considered, you know, half siblings. So
yeah, with MTHFR, it's more of a folate problem.
Yeah.
And that one, there is a head on that one, the steering committee on that one. I don't remember her name right now, but I can get back to you on her.
Thank you. Sure. But yeah, that's one thing. Also, the research hospital I went to was a huge help, at least in the beginning of it all, and the people there continue to advocate for my son. But also the pediatrician who initially missed the signs of my son having a much bigger issue, he is a huge advocate as well. Because he cares about people. That's why he's a doctor.
Yeah.
And he is also fighting in my son's corner as well. And I'm grateful to everyone who's there for us and for others in the community as well.
What are your hopes and aspirations for the future for both your child and for the broader community or individuals living with Cobalamin G?
I've said this several times throughout this meeting, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but just earlier, more efficient diagnosis and earlier treatment, because it's possible that my son wouldn't have these extra issues. There wouldn't be sprinkles on the cupcake. But now there are. But one thing, and this is something huge, even though my son has all of these other issues and struggles, he has been bouncing back full force since he's been on these medications, since they've worked on tweaking them to get the right ones. He's crawling now. He'll say a couple words. He signs. And he is living his best life. And every bit of the medicines he's on, it helps him have more life to enjoy, more life to live, more life to love. And that's one thing. My biggest dream for everyone is to be healthy, happy, alive, strong, and to have the basic life that everyone deserves.
What advice would you offer to someone who's newly diagnosed?
So my advice would be, first to make out a list or a chart of everything you need to do so you can stay on top of it. We also, because Cody had so many treatments and medicines we had to do for him initially because of how bad things got, we had like 10 alarms going off throughout the day that helped us stay on track. Also, reach out to whatever community you can for help. My local church, they weren't huge on helping me with the actual medical stuff, but there were people in that community who'd help keep an eye on my son so I could get a nap, or who'd bring us hot food that we could eat. And it's like, reach out to who you can. You're going to need support, and it's going to be hard. But there are people there. There are good people in this world. And I hope you can find a group who will help you until you have more opportunities to get your feet underneath you, because it's hard. It's a roller coaster. We had to cope with the fact that my husband and I are both carriers for Cobalamin G.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the rarest conditions in the world, and we are both carriers of it. We felt like it was our fault that my son ended up this way. And it's not the most rational thing to think. We had no idea.
Yeah.
That we had this little surprise hidden in our genes. But,
if you're tested, you don't.
Yeah. We cried for a while. Both of us did. And my husband's not a huge crier.
Mm-hmm. You're frozen. Let's see. That brings us to the end of the enlightening conclusion of this with Heather, a dedicated parent, caregiver, and advocate for individuals living with Cobalamin G, a rare form of homocystinuria. We've delved into the challenges and the resilience and the hope that defines their journey. We've also discussed the transformative potential of the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, or MNEA, ensuring access to essential medical foods, formula, and vitamins. For those who need them. In addition to learn more about the MNEA, to be sure to go to nutritionequity.org. There you can read stories of thousands of people with covered conditions, right policymakers and in your state, and to help the cause. See state by state coverage and much more. The HCU awareness. This HCU Awareness Month, let's all strive to raise awareness and promote understanding and work towards a more equitable future in healthcare. Whether you're a healthcare professional, a policymaker, a parent, or simply a concerned citizen, you can again. Okay, so
about that.
Oh, no problem. You were able to get back on, which I have never. If I do it from my end, I can't. But, much better lighting now too.
Yeah, that's because I am standing in my kitchen. I was sitting in my living room.
Yeah. But, we were pretty much done anyway.
Okay.
Let's see. This HCU Awareness Month, let's strive to raise awareness for provide understanding and work towards a more equitable future in healthcare. Whether you're a healthcare professional, a policymaker, a parent, or simply a concerned citizen, you can be part of this transformative movement. We hope this episode has inspired you to learn more, to lend your voice, your support, and your heartfelt and your heart to this cause. Share this podcast with your friends and family and colleagues, and together let's make the difference. Thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for more thoughts and for more thought-provoking discussions on nutrition equity. Until next time, remember, more equitable and inclusive future to healthcare is within reach. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.